Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again in this YouTube astrological segment. I'm going to be talking about astrology and the death of Siya Kakkar. I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name right, but anyway, some of you may have heard she was a sensation on the internet through TikTok at least, and she was a dancer. She was only 16 years old when she passed away. She attained a lot more notoriety and recognition in a very short time than most people do in a lifetime. A lot of public acclaim and success. And if anybody sees this video that is a friend or a family member of hers, just pass it on. I mean, I'm sorry, just I want to let you know that I do offer my condolences, and may she be in a better place right now. Now, according to Wikipedia.org, this was due to a suicide. I don't know if there's 100% confirmation on this, but that is what I got from the last I had looked at Wikipedia.org. Yahoo.com, when I saw the blog on there, it said it hadn't been confirmed, but somebody had stated that at least they felt that it was suicide. But anyway, now the thing about her is I don't have her time of birth, of course, not to be overly redundant with this, but I did have to improvise again and do a solar/sunrise chart, of course, where you put the sun at the position of the ascendant. Now, she was born March 11th, 2004, and it was in New Delhi, in India. She has a Pisces sun and Scorpio moon, and basically, of course, I mean, when you have the sun and the moon, both in water signs, of course, that could give certain pretty strong sensitivity. And the sun being in Pisces, I mean, the basic wants could be tied in with matters, things with music and dancing, and then you have it being flavored by the Scorpio moon, perhaps done with a lot of emotional intensity, passion, and willpower, and indomitable spirit, perhaps as well. Moon and Scorpio people can have a little bit more. I mean, have definitely, as far as the moon signs go, have may have the most willpower than any of the other moon signs. And this is a person, again, that attained fame at a very, really young age. And I just think sometimes what happens when you have people that attain success at a relatively young age, they succumb to it. They may not be able to handle the pressure. And it makes you wonder if she was going through some kind of despondency or some depression of some kind. When transit Neptune was very close proximity to her sun in Pisces at this time, and sometimes sadly when you have transit like that and Neptune hitting your sun, that could dissolve the vitality and energy of a person. And and sun is about life as well. And you also at this time transit, and it could be about the dissipation, dissolving of one's life. She also had transit Pluto very close to her natal Chiron in Capricorn. So when you're talking about Pluto is the planet of death, Chiron could be about wounds, sometimes physical, or in this case, it might have been through some emotional suffering she was going through. Maybe there was something connected with some despondency and feeling melancholy, and the death may have been tied into that. Transit Jupiter was not far from her natal Chiron in Capricorn. And as I've talked about in previous videos, that Jupiter could be rather paradoxical, could be very strongly benign and benevolent, but it could also have a tendency to enlarge and expand. Sometimes when Jupiter hits Chiron, it can enlarge and expand some suffering and some emotional wounds. And this is something too. When I looked at her chart too, is that something that stood out to me. She had on her 8th house cusp, based on the solar sunrise time, she had Libra at 29 degrees. Of course, 29 degrees can be critical in astrology. The 8th house is the house connected with death. in astrology, and you're talking about Libra at 29 degrees on the 8th house cusp. You wonder, well, how can that manifest and pan out? Well, it's a little, how I see that is it could have been some relationship crisis issues she had been going through. It could have been trying to maybe keep some equilibrium and balance, so to speak, while contending with there may have been psychological dilemmas, and maybe she was like in kind of like perpetual crisis mode as far as that was going. Maybe she was having a lot of ups and downs with that, and maybe trying to keep some psychological balance go. Maybe there was a lot of fluctuations. Remember, the 29th degree is degree of crisis and upheaval. And another thing too is that when I looked in the chart, sadly she had Pluto at a critical degree, 22 degrees in Sagittarius, and Sagittarius, of course, can be associated with what's global. She had it conjunct the midheaven in the solar sunrise chart, so it's not surprising she did gain, sadly, her death gained a lot of notoriety and recognition, sadly, and it was on, I mean, you're talking about a global level. I mean, you're talking about the sign Sagittarius having Scorpio on the 9th house cusp can play a role in some kind of death that might be globally communicated. And also too, looking at her chart as well. I mean, another thing that I did notice at this time as well is that she also had transit North Node was in her 4th house, and when you have the transit, North Node in transit can manifest in issues one may have to confront or address. This is an issue. The 4th house, sadly, is connected with the end, the latter part of life. Sometimes it can be the end of life. She also had transit Mercury in Cancer. Retrograde was not, I'm sorry, the transit Sun in Cancer was not far from her natal Saturn in Cancer. And Saturn in Cancer can sometimes give, I say, as despondency and limitations and restrictions on the home front and the domestic life with home and family. And you're also talking of when you have the sun making contact with it, the sun can shine a light, so to speak, on those issues. So that is one way I see that as manifesting and panning out for her at that time. At this time as well, you have transit Mars in Pisces at 29 degrees near the fixed star sheet. This is something where 29 degrees of Pisces can sometimes be and can be an indicator of suicide because it's by the fixed star sheet, and it's also taking in. And you're talking about Mars, of course, could be very angry, acrimonious energy, and it's taking action in those matters. It's just very sad that something like this was to happen to somebody at such a young age. And I'm just wondering if maybe speculating that this coronavirus thing is really impacting a lot more people than we really want to accept or really want to be cognizant of. I think some of us want to turn a blind eye and act like we're oblivious to these other side effects of the coronavirus. Now, I don't know if that is what played a role in it. I'm not saying she had the coronavirus. What I'm saying is that just the fact, the state of the world and this global epidemic, this pandemic that is transpiring right now, if that's causing people to become disconsolate or dejected or overly sad at this point in time. And it's a thing too where, I mean, when you look at this whole situation was something. You just how do you avoid these things, assuming this was a suicide situation? What if there's people that do things like this spontaneously, but they're not really exhibiting any behavior that's indicative of this, that gives a person a precursor perhaps of what may to come? And I think that's what makes something like this very difficult as well. Also, she had when I looked at the when I look at the chart as well, the solar sunrise chart, Aquarius being on the cusp of the 12th house could be an indicator if one were to commit suicide. It may be on something might be stated about this on the internet, because the 12th house, of course, can be associated with the internet. She also had, at this time as well, she had transit Uranus not far from her natal north node. Now, the natal north node you're talking about in being in Taurus, it's not surprising if you're talking about a future that could be tied in with the arts, which could include singing. And the thing is, when Uranus hits it, sometimes this could give something unanticipated with it. Maybe it played a role in her unanticipated fame and notoriety for what she was doing at this time. And then also transit Neptune hitting her sun was probably very beneficial in her in terms of shining in dancing and things she did musically and through and really you're talking about through videos. That is filmography. Filmography, of course, could be associated with the zodiac sign Pisces. So those are some things I noticed that as far as sadly what was connected. I mean, as far as transits and natal placements that might have been tied in with her death and passing, and it's just terrible when you hear about these things that have happened. She amassed, I believe, over 1 million followers. I don't know if it was on It might have been on TikTok. That's something you may want to confirm, people. But it was on. I think that's where she had him on. And to be only 16 years old and to attain that kind of fame and notoriety and recognition, I mean, that's phenomenal, and that'd probably be a vast understatement. So, but anyway, people, trying to see if there's anything else I was going to say regarding this. That's pretty much it. The only other thing I noticed was based on the solar sunrise time. For it put the moon in Scorpio at like around 13 degrees, I believe, and then you had the south node, which was conjuncted. And sadly, I think when you have somebody has the south node conjunct the moon, I mean, the south node can give some detriment, I think, to a planet at times. And you're talking about, I mean, the moon is already being in Scorpio in its fall, of course. It's in its it's debilitated by sign. But the thing about it is, you're talking about the moon can be connected with the soul, and the south node is what we're getting away from. And I'm just wondering if some cases that if you have other indicators by transit or natal placements, that this could be something where it's a passing of the soul early on. And of course, Scorpio is the sign sadly associated with death. But anyway, that's just a theory I have on this, and I just wanted to inject that in the video. But anyway, people, that will conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.